If you thought Season 3 was a season of companions, think again. Well, it sort of is. But Season 4, however, is looking to completely revolutionize companions for druids as well as minions for necromancers, bringing them from once pretty much meme status into the meta spotlight. Where not only were their companions significantly buffed, but there are some other cool things added as well, such as the potential Shout Druid. And first, let's talk about these buffs to companions, what that means for not only pet focused builds, but also a lot of druid builds in general. And first, you probably already saw this, but companions will now inherit 100% of a player's stats, making them many times more powerful and survivable. And so I think one of the first impacts of these is not only, of course, will pure summoner or zoo druids become a lot more viable now, but also any build that runs companions can now opt to use them as a better source of damage, right? For example, if wolves become powerful enough, maybe they will actually double as a source of good single target damage, which would then complement some of the more AoE focused builds like, say, Lightning Storm, where, by the way, now a lot of core skills focused builds, say Lightning Storm or Shred or perhaps even Tornado, actually do run companions. Even though companions are not necessarily a main damage source, they're actually run with the Shepherd's aspect, which gives you extra damage per companion that you have. And so if you actually bring that into Season 4 and continue running that to get the amplified damage to your core skills through the Shepherd's aspect, you can actually now complement your damage further by just having these very companions becoming a lot stronger. And another pretty insane change is that the Clarity passive was reworked, where previously it was giving you spirit whenever you transform into human form, but the new version is actually whenever you press a companion skill, it'll actually buff your next core or wrath skills damage and critical strike chance. So this definitely is a huge buff to, again, those builds that primarily utilize core skills and also are supplemented by companions, or even certain core skills or, say, wrath skills like Hurricane, Rabies, or Boulder that can actually become much stronger because of this change too. And this will definitely require further testing, but there's even a chance that some builds may opt to drop one of their existing aspects in favor of something like the aspect of the Wild Rage, which will actually allow your companions to benefit from the Bestial Rampage key passive, which alongside a lot of the buffs to shapeshifting passives could actually incentivize these even core skills focused builds to shift their builds around a little bit, add in a bit more shapeshifting, and also allocate a lot more of their damage into companions just by making these simple swaps. And moving on, another pretty big change coming to the Druid that might have been overshadowed by these companion changes is that Druids can actually use and benefit from the Bold Chieftain's aspect, which was previously only usable by Barbarians, as well as the aspect of Echoing Fury, which is getting its name changed to aspect of Vocalized Empowerment, alongside yet another couple of changes, which is first of all Debilitating Roar becoming a shout skill, getting a new shout tag to be able to benefit from these aforementioned aspects, and also with Blood Howl's Night Howler aspect, also adding on the shout tag to that skill. Druids essentially will have two different shouts potentially to work with, and be able to, if you equip them on your rings, benefit from the Bold Chieftain's aspect, which will reduce the cooldowns on your shouts whenever you cast it with enemies around, and also, more notably, the aspect of Vocalized Empowerment, again previously known as aspect of Echoing Fury, which will give you a ton of primary resource per second while any of your shouts is active, which in my opinion would greatly address some of the resource hunger issues of the Druid, right? Especially if Season 4 doesn't have something equivalent to the Seneschal, which in Season 3 was generating a lot of resource for Druids. And couple these with the Flesh Render unique, which if I assume a lot of the static damage on legendaries and uniques will be buffed like the devs said they would, if the damage can actually scale a lot higher on items like Flesh Render as well, then we really have a fully functioning shout build for Druids, and also the potential to combo these shouts with other skills as well, with the Flesh Render adding yet another layer of strong AoE damage. And now let's take a look at some of my theory-crafted meta Season 4 Druid builds that you can consider trying out. Starting with the Companion Druid, and I've actually decided to combo it or hybridize it with the Shout Druid to give it a bit more AoE, because as a baseline, the Companion Druid seems to be slightly weaker on the AoE front, and so having Flesh Render and being able to then spam your shouts, again with Blood Howl becoming a shout with the Night Howlers aspect, and then Debilitating Roar just being a shout on its own, you'll be able to deal a lot more AoE damage in theory anyway, right? Coupled with how the flat damage scaling on these like uniques and legendaries should be scaling with weapon damage in Season 4. And you'll notice that some of the items here I have are blank, and that's because they're currently placeholders, as some of the Season 4 changes have not been implemented on these character planners yet. But first of all, for this blank ring, and of course I'll link all these build templates in the description box below for you to just check out on your own time. But anyhow, to explain, the blank ring here, I'm looking to run the Bold Chieftain's aspect to reduce the cooldowns of your shout skills. And again, your Blood Howl is a shout skill now. And then for the boots here, I'm looking to run the new unique called Yen's Blessing, which whenever you cast a skill has a chance to allow you to trigger or cast another skill that is on cooldown, as long as it's not a mobility or an ultimate skill. So this Yen's Blessing will also allow you to trigger any of your skills here, whether it be your shouts or your pet skills. Doing any of these is quite powerful. And then for skills, again, it's a lot of the shape-shifting standard skills, because your companions will be benefiting from Bestial Rampage. And by the way, really quick for the aspects, I'm just running a core, pretty standard companion setup with Wild Rage, Alpha to buff your wolves, even trying out Storm's Companion, but we'll see how good this actually is. And then Stampede, and then here I also have Virulent to buff Rabies. Coming back to the skill tree here, we have maxed Rabies, because if you have Clarity also, it'll be able to buff with the rework Clarity, whenever you cast a pet skill, it'll buff your next Wrath skill, right? So with this being a Wrath skill, it'll be quite powerful indeed, kind of a one-point wonder if you will. And then moving up, we have lots of the pet stuff, also fairly maxed out except for Poison Creeper, which can perhaps be an option if we can find places to spare points, perhaps some points from Debilitating Roar, which I currently have like 3 points into, to have a lower cooldown. So perhaps you could take out some of the points from Debilitating Roar, put them in a Poison Creeper, and then perhaps replace your Maul with Poison Creeper to have a fuller pet setup. But that remains to be tested as well. And one of the reasons I have Maul is to allow for easier activation of the Bestial Rampage passive, even though you really only need to activate it once every 15 seconds, or as in go into bear form. So it might actually be better to run Poison Creeper, so I think I'll update my build for that. Anyway, it's easy to tweak. And just for a couple more examples of currently good builds that may be able to be buffed further by some of these companion and shape-shifting changes, starting with Shred. I haven't really changed much from the Season 3's viable version of Shred, but I did swap out a few skills. Like I put in Lacerate, because Lacerate was also hugely buffed in Season 4, as it'll also give you a buff to your damage buff to your shape-shifting skills after you cast it, so it's really strong for Shred in my opinion, and the cooldown can also get reduced. And then I'm also running Bestial Rampage again, and just Maul to be able to shift in and out really quickly to gain the benefit from Bestial Rampage. And then of course a lot of these like shape-shifting passes were also buffed, so I think that will be pretty powerful as well. And I'm also running the standard companion setup with Clarity. And then for my aspects, I'm also thinking of trying out Storm's Companion, although you could definitely go with something more defensive here. And then the rest is pretty standard stuff. You have Shepherds on the Amulet for extra core skill damage. This, by the way, also benefits Wrath skills, so it could also be good for builds that are using, say, Hurricane or Boulder or Rabies. And then I'm also gonna look to try out Wild Rage aspect to see how powerful the companions will become, but this can definitely be swapped out for something like Accelerating aspect if you just want the extra attack speed, which again will also, by the way, buff your pets. But I think this might definitely be worth, or the aspect of the Wild Rage will definitely be worth a try. Another cool change to shapeshifting is the changeling stat aspect. This will now benefit both werewolf and werebear skills and will allow you to deal extra damage against either poisoned or crowd controlled enemies, which if you just have the slowing talent right here, neurotoxin, as long as you're poisoning enemies, you'll have a very easy time to crowd control enemies as well, right? So I think changeling's depth is another really powerful aspect if you're running any sort of shape-shifting setup in Season 4. And lastly here, I also want to showcase a new Landslide pet build and shout build that I think might actually be really good, especially with the new unique that they added for Landslide called Earthbreaker, which will cause your Landslide to deal extra AoE damage in the ground, and then also allow you to proc additional landslides whenever you cast landslides in that small zone. So I think that'll be really fun and interesting. Perhaps will be good for Trample Slide as well, right? Yet another build, but for this non-Trample Slide version of Landslide, where you'll just be spamming Landslide on its own, you'll definitely need a lot of resource generation, right? And to alleviate that, I'm thinking to run the new aspect of Echoing Fury. Well, previously it was called aspect of Echoing Fury, and it's going to be my other ring here. So again, the first ring here will be the unique ring for Landslide. The other ring placeholder here is going to be the aspect of Vocalize Empowerment, which will actually generate you primary resource whenever one of your shouts is active. So with two shouts here, with Bloodhowl and Debilitating Roar, with again Bloodhowl becoming a shout through the Night Howlers aspect, you'll have pretty high uptime on your sort of passive resource generation just by having these two shouts, on top of course all the benefits that they give you, and on top of the fact that Bloodhowl will also generate you spirit on its own, right? Next, you can also run again the new Yen's Blessing unique, which whenever you cast a skill has a chance to activate one of your skills on cooldown, which again can be any of your shout skills or your pet skills. Whichever you cast, you'll have a pretty good benefit out of it because again of the Clarity passive that was reworked, allowing you to buff your core skills whenever you cast your pet skills, and then your shouts will be generating you that resource. And for the rest of my aspects, it's the pretty standard Shepherd's aspect because it's going to give you a lot more damage per companion that you have. And then for the other aspects, I have the Landslide standard ones. So Subterranean, which is going to be great for Poison Creeper, and then if you're using Yen's Blessing to reset your cooldown on your Poison Creeper, that's going to be really cool as well to be able to spam landslides in an AoE. Not to mention the Pack Leader Spirit Boon was also buffed to give you an even higher chance to reset the cooldowns on your companion skills, so that's yet another reason to utilize companions in any build. For the rest of the aspects, again it's lots of landslide stuff, so Aftershock, and then Ballistic I think might be cool to give you extra ranks on your chest, but if you want to run something more defensive, that's fine too. And then last but not least, Godslayer Crown for some juicy bossing damage. And then Juggernaut as well, I think it's a decent all-rounded defensive option. For the skills, it's pretty standard. It's just maxing out Landslide, getting Primal Landslide, getting 1 point essentially in all of your pets, maxing Clarity, getting some points in your shouts, and then getting some of the earth related or earth spell related passives, getting Envenom as well, as you'll be poisoning with Poison Creeper. And then for the key passive, I'm just running Earth Sign Strength for some extra damage. If you need more spirit, perhaps Earth and Might is good too. Petrify might also be another option if you don't run one of these shouts, right? Perhaps you can free up one of these shouts, run Petrify instead. That could be a potential other option as well, especially seeing as Petrify is also getting buffed. It'll give you additional spirit, and you'll be able to reduce its cooldowns whenever you kill enemies. And with that, of course, there could definitely be other configurations and builds that one can try out. Feel free to experiment and go wild with the PTR as well as the character planners, and let me know if you come up with anything cool in the comment section below, and I'll definitely reply to your comment. Also, let me know what you think of the builds that I've come up with, whether there's anything that you think I should change or add, and just your thoughts on the changes coming to the Druid in Season 4 in general. Anyhow, thank you so much for watching. Remember to like the video and consider subscribing to my channel if you found it helpful for more cutting edge guides, and I will see you in the next one. Peace.